Hello, friends. I'm Joseph, and this is Home of Sound. We started Home of Sound, this podcast series, and a series of masterclasses with one main intention: to help artists, record label owners, promoters, playlist curators, and others in the music industry share their message, connect, and help each other. We hope that you will get inspired by their stories, experiences, tools, and work, and that by spending time with them, you will also get to know them as people. You can connect with us on social media, and if you are a producer and want to know more about masterclasses, the accelerator program, or one-to-one support, get in touch or check our website, homeofsound.co.uk. Without further ado, let's welcome today's guest. Luca Mortellaro, better known as Lucy, is the artist and record label owner who joins us on this week's podcast. Playing clubs and events across the world, including Berghain, Intercell and MONOM, Lucy also heads the renowned label Stroboscopic Artefacts, that over the year has established itself in the electronic music scene as one of the principal platforms for techno and experimental music. Lucy has also earned its production credentials, having a number of his unique and ambitious creations released on Mote Evolver, Samurai Horo and Rodhad's label, to name a few. In this podcast, Luca details how curiosity has propelled his musical development, how artists shape their own voice by working beyond archetypes, and the creative blocks he's faced during the current video steam meltdown the world is facing right now. We also delve into how Stroboscopic Artefacts has developed an artist roster based on trust in the artists themselves, Luca's relationship with yoga and meditation, as well as an insider's view into his collaboration with Speedy J, Zeitgeber, and Rrose, the Lotus Eaters. Without further ado, enjoy Lucy. So Luca, thanks so much for being with us. Welcome. Where in the world can we find you? You are in Palermo, right?
That's where I was born and grew up for 18 years before moving abroad. And since the beginning of 2020, actually, I moved here to kind of get a little closer to my family, my parents getting older and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so we, me and my family, we decided to give it a try, at least for a little bit, and see how we felt. Also because we have, I've been living in big cities for so long. I was in Berlin for a long time and Paris before that. So I'm still going back and forth from Berlin a lot, of course, but still running my sound bath sessions and stuff like this. But basically, I wanted to try having a base here, and moving the studio. And yes, it has been interesting. Only that 2 months in, something slightly big happened, and there we are in this new world.
Yeah, in a completely different world. So you left, basically, for people who don't know, you left Berlin the start of 2020, before all this mess happened, and then when things started shutting down, you were already in Palermo. In Italy.
Luckily, because there was somehow it was because for me and for a lot of other artists, for most artists actually, our at least let's say particularly the ones that were keeping, let's say, the more underground community of electronic music alive, this has been like an atomic bomb on all of our lives, so it's we are struggle is real, our economy has been completely crashed. So of course here where I am, life is much cheaper, so that makes things a bit easier, you know what I mean? So
struggle is real,
our economy has been completely crashed. So
no, I think I solved it.
Yes,
and this is the old nighttime economy. Yes, so we had a bit of echo, and I shut down the mic.
No worries. But yeah, what I was saying is like, it's like struggle is real for a lot of artists at the moment. And what I was saying is like somehow having moved here just before this pandemic happened was a big of a help because yeah, things are a little bit easier if you don't have the same economic financial pressure you have in cities like London, Amsterdam, or to be honest, Berlin, because it's no more the Berlin of 10 years ago. It's another Berlin. It's
yeah.
Mm.
It is indeed, yeah. And did you move the studio, because I see now in your background you have a lot of gears.
Yeah, actually, for a little bit, I was like kind of keeping both, but then I realized that for me it's very important when I make music to have a center of focus. Like for me, the studio, particularly with my former touring life, was like a place where I was coming back that was always in the same place, always in the same city, where I wasn't like like a place that was like very familiar, let's say. And there was like has always been this super interesting contrast between like studio life, that where you're like alone in a very like acoustically treated place, like when sounds are like a little bit muffled sometimes here when you speak, and the touring where you are like constantly squashed around hotels, cars, planes, venues and stuff like this. So it's like that thing of having two studios in two places really didn't work for me. So I was like, no, I want to focus, like, and so I decided to I took actually the chance also to rebuild the studio, have a new setup, and it's always good from time to time doing that. Like, consider, even when I always had the studio in one place, like in Berlin, every third year I was like completely disassembling it and remounting it, because it changed completely. When you change your workflow, you change also how the music comes out, like, so,
Absolutely. And I think we had a chat with Arnaud Letexier, who was saying similar things, that like sometimes when he faces creative blocks, he literally disassemble the studio and reshuffle things, and that helps you when you get there.
Very good strategy. Like, I fully agree. Like, that's I don't do that often, but like normally it happens every time I make like an album effort, like soon after, you know what I mean? Because for me, an album effort is always like takes all of me, you know what I mean? Like when I work on an album and on a bigger architecture, like, and then like probably in the 6 to 12 months after releasing an album, that you have this moment of like, whoa, like creative breathing and not producing, like that's when it normally happens, that I like dismantle the whole thing and rebuild it. Like,
it's almost like you need to reset, because you've been stuck in the same cycle of your life. You just want to find another way
yeah, definitely. Even when things are great, I mean, when you make an album that works very well, that you're very happy with, it's not I wouldn't use the word stuck, because that has a kind of a negative connotation. Even when it's good, it's still like a good discipline exercise to challenge yourself, that is like, this worked, but I cannot sit in the same place. I need to go forward. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah.
And the question that comes to mind now is, it's such a tough moment for everyone, and your life, like life probably of most of the people, has changed dramatically, especially of artists. So how do you keep yourself balanced and perhaps inspired to do music now?
Well, balanced, yes, that thing. So no, I gotta say, I of course try my best, as I guess all of us, like, meaning like I have some tools that are like, I don't know, yoga practice, pranayama, deep breathing and stuff like this, like that kind of keep me somehow on the sanity level, but I gotta say that like, it's a very serious issue right now. So like, whatever I can tell you that makes me feel a little better, for me, it's still very important to point out the fact that, like, to everyone out there as well, even like if to all the institutions that are somehow listening to our messages from the artistic community, like, struggle is real. What we're living as artists is a real trauma. Okay. Like I was speaking to just an interesting episode. Like I was speaking with a very good friend of mine. Like we know each other since like a long time, and this person, like we took really different paths in life. This person is like a specialized surgeon, works with the surgery on newborns, so a very intense job. And we were speaking when I was trying to express him how I feel about the situation. He was like, yeah, but and I was like, yeah, but I mean, I'm speaking to someone that is like operating on newborns. Like this is like, these are not real problems. He was like, no, wait a second, they are. It's just like a different scale and things. It's just like, and he was like, if I imagine someone telling me from 1 week to another, you cannot work anymore, the work you trained for like 10, 15, 20 years, where you are like stable, you have your thing, you build your life around it, doesn't exist anymore. I don't know how I would react. They would tell me, and then all of a sudden they tell me, no, it's not for 2 months, it's for 4 months, actually it's for 6, actually 1 year, actually we have no fucking idea. And like and actually we have no idea also how it's gonna be when you will be able to work again, if we will work with you in the way we worked before. Like it's like and when I realized this from a completely outside perspective, because until then I mostly talked about these things with other artists, with other music business people, but when I realized from such an outsider point of view where we are with our whole massive community, massive economy, like it's just like it's a real deal. Like and it's not so, to be honest, it's not so spoken about. I can tell. Like I still feel some that like, probably because institutions are like traditionally very old, so they don't, in most places they don't even consider our scene. Like, you know what I mean? Like like not all places are like Germany, you know what I mean? And even in Germany it's a struggle already. So imagine in places like Italy, Spain, Portugal, like where like where,
completely. I mean, I always felt like, coming from Italy as well, I always felt that in Italy being an artist is not a real job. So people look at you and like, yes, when you say I'm an artist, I'm a musician, they tend to ask you, but what's your real job? And even in places where like Germany or UK, where artist is a job like many others, still I think a lot of people like at least have bigger fish to fry, and they're like, okay, the economy is collapsing, there is a huge impact on people's salaries as a whole. So their artistic salaries or the economy, it just falls into the lowest bucket of priority.
Yeah, which is kind of it's kind of intense to think that way. It's kind of a very fastest way to think about society, to think like, hey, wait a second, how necessary is your category? Dude, we're not at the apocalypse. And also like a lot of the COVID thing has also been, of course, manipulated heavily by private interests as well. You know what I mean? Like when you I mean, let's not get into that, but you know, I'm not so keen on how politics plays like in this situation, let's say.
It's a difficult situation, especially for the hospitality sector, entertainment, because the whole industry is based on people getting close together, right? So now it's the thing that you should not do. Whatever happens, I don't know, do whatever you want, stop working, I don't know, read, but you cannot be with other people, which is a huge shame for all of us, for all the artists. And I want to talk about like your creativity as well, and moving on to a bit better topics, at least more inspiring. So I mean, there's so many questions that I want to ask, but I'm thinking about talking about your origins. So you came from Palermo, Sicily. You went and studied in Paris for a few years, eventually moved to Berlin about 11 years ago. Now you're back to Palermo. Was there like a, let's say, common thread that always inspired you, moved you to search for something different?
I would say like it's a sense of exploration somehow. Like it's something that I don't know. I always have the feel, like, to be honest, I always had the feeling there was that you know, that feeling of like feeling weirder than the rest of people around you. So I always had this feeling that has been like kind of a curse and a blessing at the same time, of being a bit like a fish out of the water, you know, like so in wherever place I was. So I've been always somehow pushed to look at something else. Like the moment where I find things crystallizing around me, I cannot be there, you know. I need this I have this urge to like, no, this is too comfortable, and comfortable means sleepy, and sleepy means the death of the brain, you know. So I need to explore forward. So it's been like, so that has been like, curiosity has been the main thread, of course. Like when I consider, I was born and grew up here in Palermo, like, and yeah, I could say I come from a quite poor family, you know, very like, I mean, as much as non-privileged a white Western guy can be, it was a not very privileged family, like, let's say. So I lived like a lot in the streets, you know, like with like I lived a lot inside, for example, like my whole first music education has been with, like, for example, the African community here in Palermo, you know, and it was like so massively formative music wise, you know. Then like I moved to Siena because of some actual connection through that community and into something else. It was like the university, and then I kind of followed a little bit where the university survival was bringing me. Like I was on scholarships all the way up to Paris, and that's when I experienced like the first time like a big capital, you know, with all what that means. And then after Paris, it was like kind of where I was, that it was like the music thing was going better and better and bigger in my life. And I was like, at some point it became unmanageable to do both the university research and like, and I was like, now it's time for a choice. And it was like also a specific historical moment where like in Paris, Sarkozy was president, like, so very, very right-wing president that started to shut down all the parties, all the and at some point there was like this Berlin thing that where I've been at that time a few times, a very different Berlin than the one of nowadays, let's say, where things, it was like everything's super easy, you know. You get there, and I was like, in 48 hours I had the choice of like 3 beautiful flats, one in Friedrichstrasse, the other in Kotti, the other like, and I don't know, everything was costing super cheap. Even making records was super cheap. So it was like this is easy, like, and so I went to Berlin as I guess moved by the same reasons and so many other artists. And then yeah, I think we built something very beautiful in those years. Like, and then and then I stayed there for like 11 years until very recently, when I back in January did this test of like, how does it feel to come back to where my roots are, and what are the limits and advantages, let's say. And
who knows, maybe you're gonna go back to Berlin at some point, or you're gonna explore something different.
I really don't know yet. It's actually a hot topic of discussion right now, because as I said, like, of course, this situation with COVID, like, upset everything, you know. All of your plans are completely different than what you thought, of course. So everything is in big discussion. And also, to be honest, like, the point is like, it matters relatively where you are right now. The situation is global, you know, like that's
exactly. Situation is global. You probably end up doing the same things on from wherever you are, from the laptop.
Somehow, like, I want to stick to the place where like I can like exploit, let's say, and I can thrive in my creativity the most. That has been always the law and rule of each and every move I've ever done in my life. Like, wherever my creativity can thrive, I go, you know. And by creativity, that's different. That's a different move than like moving to where your happiness bring you, because that's a very different thing. Quite often, happiness and creativity don't go along very well. Let's say when things are too balanced, then harmonic creativity start to sleep, get asleep somehow. Like so.
It's very true, and I think it's very personal, but I think people can associate creativity with moments of stress or hate or depression, even. So I think it's definitely not, they're not necessarily together.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't have to be apocalyptic, but let's just say strong emotional movements of whatever kind bring always to strong creativity, because they create something new, they create new patterns inside you. So, and therefore, whatever you're expressing takes newer, fresher, more inspiring shapes, like.
Yes, indeed, it's refreshing. And there was something that I found interesting in one of the previous interview that you gave, and it was about, I think, the path of the artist, which is you defined like an artist, if I remember well, it was someone who is managing to work with archetypes and
I
bend them.
I remember. Yes. That's that's a very good one, and it's not even totally mine. I mean, it's a philosopher and psychoanalyst that was called Carl Gustav Jung, that spoke about the archetypes, and I just find myself very aligned with those definitions. Let's say, like, it's really, to me, like, somehow what puts in common artists, wherever they are in their scenes, it's always this I don't know, ability to take those archetypes, to take those like traits that are common to humans, let's say, that like I don't know, I put on a melody or a mood. It doesn't have to be a melody in a track, like I put it there as a human, and I know somehow it resonates in you as a human too, and it will not resonate to my dog or my cat. You know what I mean? Like, it's really about humanity, and something that is common to us. Like, when artists somehow has this ability of like playing with those archetypes, and for me, like, the most interesting art comes when the artist the artist makes this kind of effort to fold these archetypes, to change their original shape, to play with it. And it's like we were speaking, I mean, so many times I got asked, like, but you are a techno DJ, but like what you do is techno, but it's also so much, like, there's so much stuff of different shit and I've always, like, when I think about like when my career really took off, was when I released my very first album. It was like 2010, 2011, was this album called Wordplay for Working Bees, where there's nothing barely danceable, maybe one track, and to me it was like a huge surprise. I was like, I produced that album out of a very pure play. It was like not at all like something that I should do this so that I can do a promotion campaign, so that my bookings can be blah blah blah, like, and all of that thing. Like, it was really purely an output of the ways I was feeling, and it was like all of a sudden I don't know, there's this magic that happens that is like somehow I played with certain archetypes of techno, and even if it's not regularly techno, you listen to the album and you think it's a techno album, and that's
that's interesting, because I think from, you maybe think now about the archetype thing, maybe the archetype makes it relatable to people, so people maybe
somehow.
Exactly, so people recognize something that they relate to, and they just like it because they've listened to something that they connect with their emotions, and then you then rechange it.
So listen, think about like the magic of a Burial album, okay? Like that is the quintessence of this ability for me. Like taking like voices from pop and mainstream, changing them over, like and being still defined as a dubstep album, like what? You know what I mean? Like, and it still makes completely sense somehow, like, so
It's interesting because there's a lot of artists that I think at the start of their career they go in the creative music with a lot of purity, like you mentioned. you approach the album with, you wanted to do your music, you didn't think about how to promote it. But then eventually, the more you progress, the more there is some expectation from the market, from the label you work with, and they try to actually bring you back in the archetype. It's like, you make this music.
This is true, but at the same time, I also, and it's like obviously true, let's say, but like another aspect is the fact that like truly over this last 10, 11 years, the techno scene changed radically, man. Like it wasn't just like, let's say, me all of a sudden starting to also take into consideration expectations, which is the truth, you know, like because I wasn't used to be confronted with crowds all the time, so that becomes integral part of your life. Like when half of your time you are touring and playing, like that's your life becomes it, and it wasn't that. So that started to be a playing element, like other elements were before, you know. It's a natural process. But aside of that, there's a lot of change in the whole dynamics of the techno scene, to be honest, and in general of the electronic music scene in general, but particularly the dance music one, for sure. Like,
you mean in a good way? So there's more space.
I don't mean it judgmentally good or bad, like, but there has been a huge shift of parameters, you know, like, and things became massively global. Something that was like, you know, even when I speak about, like, when we started this interview, like actors, I said something like actors of the underground music culture. But then when I think about it, like, depends on what we mean with underground, because before it was like niches, but if you through social media you multiply these little niches for like thousands, then it makes sense that like was what my thoughts. Like, for example, the first time I was booked for a tour in Australia, and I was like, fucking hell, like underground what? Like there are people that are like investing so much money to make me perform on the other side of the planet, you know, like, so that's global already, you know what I mean? And then things became very big, very quick for a lot of platforms, for a lot of techno DJs and stuff, like, so that's that wasn't like this before, to be honest. Like it was to a certain degree, but there's something that like structurally changed in the music business, in my opinion, in this last 10 years, as it changed in all businesses. And in that sense, social media has been like a huge player, you know, like, so
a huge player in a lot of good ways, in my view, like as
also,
you said, like
sure, I'm not judging it, I'm just saying like it was a massive change, and also in the way our mind, like our minds has been transformed, you know, like that's the truth as it is. Like, and I'm of a generation, I can just imagine what the mind of a 16 years old right now is like. It's like already probably very far away from my universe, you know what I mean, of perception, you know. And still I'm into a job where we're like, you know, that like that the beauty of the music is like crossing generation, where you're like you know, still no matter the age. That was always the beautiful thing about techno for me, like to go into a dance floor where you have all ages, all kinds, all sexes, all interests, all colors, like, and everything's just fine, you know, like,
there is a side of like, in a way, social media for me is bringing a lot of beautiful things. I just saw that there's a friend of us connected from Iran, and this is amazing, you know, right? So we're having a chat, we're sitting to different places. There is people from potentially anywhere in the world. We're listening to this conversation. And music is like the core of this, but then social media is like amplifying this effect of music, of bringing people together, even when physical space is not an option.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Problems arise when you start to ask yourself, who's running the social media? Then like there are quite a few complications to that, but I see the point. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's a perverse incentive for any media essentially to sell the bad stuff, and eventually those are marketing. Like, if you think about it, the media incentive is to make profit. They run the company. There's a part to like for connecting people, but eventually it's a corporation that has to make profit, and they optimize for profit.
Yeah, for sure.
Huge problem. one thing that I wanted to ask is, it's about, I think it can be related. So now that everybody is exposed to judgment of other people, how can someone learn to be either immune or to protect themselves from external criticism?
Well, there we're coming to a minefield now.
Yeah, let's go.
Because there is like, let's say there are like, there are, it's like there are a lot of sides to be considered of a culture where like the judgment on things is simply given to the crowd. You know what I mean? Because the if we look at it historically, like, and now I'm speaking about really what's known to be as the canceling culture. You know what I mean? Like where like one discussion on Twitter can bring to huge consequences for movements and individuals.
Right.
Like and the like, let's say the beauty of that is that there like certain revolutions are actually possible, and are actually easier somehow.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's a very like talking about like when we speak about the democratic aspect of things, that becomes very problematic because let's say democracy history has been a history of like avoiding this direct people trial, because masses can be very easily manipulated, as we learn over and over again in history, like, and even very recently with fucking Cambridge Analytica shit and Trump elections and Brexit and stuff like this. We know that masses can be manipulated easily, very easily. So giving the let's say judging power, like to simply the masses is a very non-democratic process and can bring to very populistic outputs, and that's where populistic governments thrive on. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a very delicate balance, let's say, So it's a paradox that we have to learn to deal with, because look at, for example, let's say the George Floyd happening. Like this has been so important that it was on social media, so important. Like in another age, it could have been completely hidden, and another black man in US would have been like horribly dying in silence without any consequences, and this is not okay. So that is absolutely amazing, and also as but it's a bit dangerous when like the masses start to feel that they are entitled to judge and to hate on things very quickly, even if this hate is directed to the right target, like fucking Minneapolis police or something like this. Like, it's still very dangerous. You know what I mean? Because hate can be like, once again, hate is a very easily to be manipulated feeling. Okay, so that's those are my thoughts. Like when I'm always like split into this two words, and I'm like, yeah, this is amazing, but this is also problematic. You know what I mean? And like, and at the same time, we are in a moment where like being problematic is not okay, pretty much. Like, let's say, where I see how much on social media there's like a huge mass of people that are there like really waiting to be able to hate being right. You know what I mean? So having the chance to rightfully hate, let's say. I don't know how I can express it better.
Basically, the excuse, a scapegoat.
And it's a little bit dangerous, you know what I mean? Like, that's a problem, because also when you have that, it's let's say, in the end, what happens is that like me and this other person that are kind of on the same sides, but not making maybe speaking exactly correctly or being politically correct in the way we speak exactly, like, you know, a lot of issues that should not divide us, because the enemy is someone else, you know what I mean, the real enemy, end up in us dividing each other, and in people like Donald Trump thriving instead, like, you know,
exploiting the split between the population.
Exploiting the split. So somehow there is like a responsibility of this pretty terrible rise in populism also in our alternative and somehow leftist culture, you know what I mean? Like,
there's you might have seen it already. There is the documentary on Cambridge Analytica, and I'm pretty sure you have seen it or heard of it. And there is another one that came out a few months ago called The Social Dilemma. And that one is interesting because it talks a lot about how whoever can exploit essentially a mass of people. I'll send you the link as well.
Yeah, please.
And Social Dilemma. And the interesting thing of this one is that it is spoken. So the people who are interviewed are ex-employees of these huge media companies or tech companies. So people who wrote the algorithm of YouTube, right? So people who, exactly, who tell you exactly how this thing eventually spiraled out of hand. And it's incredible. It's scary, but very, very interesting to watch. I would definitely recommend it to anyone who's interested and to you, of course.
Thank you. Yeah.
And one question so for an artist who is thinking, I want to make this music that I don't quite feel would be right to put outside, and then they end up releasing something, and let's say they get thrown hate. People tell them this is shit. How can someone like just overcome that and be like, you know, I just need to face this block and continue doing the music that I love?
Well, I guess, you know, somehow for me, integrity is something very important, as is awareness of the surroundings, let's say. That means I am an advocate of artistic integrity, of course, as I hope I demonstrated over my albums and EPs and stuff, like, and in general artistic choices. But I'm also an advocate of the artist that is not closed in a bell, you know, like I don't trust too much that very Renaissance style idea of the artist that is like a total, you know, Michelangelo, like a genius, whatever he does, it's amazing and stuff like this. That is like a little bit the idol culture that I don't trust so much, because once again, it's one of those aspects that can be heavily manipulated. So for me, it's very important to keep your integrity, but it's also very important to understand, like, what am I triggering, you know? Because if you get hate, you know, and I got a lot of haters in my career, you know, like I do, you know what I mean? Like, for many reasons. Like, last example, like a few days ago, I posted a picture dedicated to this Proud Boys movement of super white supremacists in US, like where you know, I was kissing another man, you know, passionately. And like, I think I'm not joking, I lost like some hundreds followers in like 2 hours.
My God.
And that tells you a lot about like this kind of cleansing process. And I was there like, yes, that's the door. That was a perfect way to clean a little bit my followings, like, you know what I mean, like, and like this to tell you. Or I got like some people posting like the like a emoji of someone like throwing up like green toxic stuff, like really intense, you know. And for me, it's like, I'm not there to explain you like what is inside me, like in terms of like my sexual orientation, or what does queer culture means to me, and in which way, you know what I mean? Like, the point is another one, like that. As for the artist releasing something and getting hate, you have to ask yourself, what is that I'm triggering? Like, what exactly is like, and when you ask yourself that question, actually gathering hate can be a success. And that's the example I was doing with what happened to me just like 2 days ago, literally. And the same goes with the music. Like when you release something and people are like, this is shit, like, because to be honest, if it was really shit, people would not really care. Like it would pass invisible. There's so much content, you know what I mean, that you don't like, unless something catch attention, it's probably fading away. But if it does catch attention, that's a good thing already. Like a new artist, a newcomer should be very happy, even about gathering hate, to be honest. Like because that means you are triggering something, you are provoking some processes, and that's a fucking good thing. Okay, it's like somehow I mean, I still remember like a long conversation like many years ago with Nina Kravitz. She's like, we're very good friends since a long time, you know, and I still remember when she did that video of the bathtub, the bubbles thing, like, it was crazy. Like the whole web like exploded in this immense hatred, you know what I mean? And to me it was like, you know, like, I understand the critics, understand the fact that like whatever topic of like using one's objectified body and stuff, but she's making a choice that is provoking a series of pretty intense reactions. That is a good thing. And that is a good thing. So if you are a new artist and you release something and people are like, this is fucking shit online and stuff like this, you are provoking that. Go on, fucking hell, even bring it to the extreme, like, you know what I mean, and trigger that even more. You know, like, that's my suggestion.
Fully agree. So long as again, like I think the only limit that I would see there would be, if you're not offensive, do whatever the fuck you want. Actually, it's better to do something that makes you unique and makes you the real you. Yeah. And as a label owner, I'm going to ask you a bit more about Stroboscopic Artefacts, of course, but as a label owner, how can you support your artist, the artist in your roster, to be that person who's actually going deeper into who they really are? For example, you just released an EP by Adiel, Alessia, and how can you mentor them, support them, be the shoulder for them to feel safe that they can be who they really are?
Well, I gotta say, when we make the example of Alessia, of Adiel, like, I think she came in a very specific moment. Like the release was already planned pre-COVID, then the whole apocalypse started. So to be honest, like, aside the actual pure release processes, I couldn't support it in any other way, you know what I mean? And that's we both knew, but it's like one it was just because you named it that I was like, she came really into a very particular moment. It was just like the last EP we released before taking a break for now and waiting a little bit, you know, which is what we're doing now as a label. But for the rest, like over the years, for me, supporting always meant what I would love to have around me if I was like giving my music to someone else to release, which is like making me feel that there is a constructive feedback, but that at the end of the day, like the relationship between label or music manager and artist, you know, is the one of like, I trust you as an artist. It's not that I'm interested to that or that track because that track is cool. It's like, I'm interested in you because I know about, once again, your artistic integrity, you know, so that whatever you do, even if it's not exactly my cup of tea, you will have your reasons and I will trust those reasons. That's the way I always like to think, particularly when it was about album projects, so about things that are more substantial than an EP, of course. So that's and that's how all the artists I released know me for as a label manager, you know what I mean? And
that I believe is super strong support, because I don't know what else you can do for them. Like, there is more like encouraging than trusting them to be to do.
But that's how to say that. That's also how kind of the magic happens, you know. Like as a label owner, I learned so much over the years because I also let it be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like sometimes I was surprised a lot by what the artist was giving me, that is like that's a quintessence of the best experience you can have as a label owner. That you're like, I am not sure about this, but like it's so intense that I will release it anyway because you make me feel you are trusting it so much as an artist that I gotta trust you. That's what it is, and that's when like maybe on the release and when things start to echo and people start to play it and you experience it on a dance floor and then on a festival and stuff like this, like that's when you maybe even yourself as a label owner is like, whoa, now I fucking got it, like and I couldn't get it before, and it's okay, but I trusted the person. And
Yeah.
this is the biggest reward I can get as a label manager,
Yeah. It's like you're discovering a new record in a shop, but it's your label. It's like
Yes, exactly. But it's your artist. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
it's amazing. And then flipping the let's say the sides. If you were to approach a label that you're working with, what would be a good way? Well, actually, let me ask the question this way.
Mhm.
How would you feel comfortable in working with someone you released with, like another regular label owner? What would you like to see when you release another
Hang
label?
on. Can you repeat that?
Yes. I confused myself.
No worries. I confuse myself all the time. That's an actually super cool feeling.
It happens.
Keep confusing yourself. Just go.
I will do it for sure. And at least people know that this is not scripted. The interview is live. And
It's really not.
real.
It's the real deal. Yes.
So talking about you as an artist approaching and releasing on a record label, what would make you feel supported by a record label owner that you don't know, aside from what you just said?
A nice contract for $10 million. No, I'm joking.
Sure.
Well, it would be also the trust, to be honest,
Yeah.
to be able to give my fully formed artistic idea, to be able to be on a path of like constant feedback and checking in and out on how the work is going, and in a way that is not the approach of like, I like it, I don't like it, because that
Right.
becomes judgmental. But more, I give you an example like that is not really the relationship with a label owner. Someone wrote about the Voltage Festival set. Yeah, I still remember that place was amazing. Thank you, Giaggio 1010. Anyway, and like the like one example that comes to my mind is like the work I did together with Rrose as Lotus Eater, for example. Like when we sit in the studio together, it's like and like by choice we always decided to basically never work apart, like, but only to work when we can be physically together. Like when we sit down, like we speak about things that I wish sometimes I could like record those few words over the sessions and listen to them, because it's like the weirdest and most abstract talks you can imagine, and you don't even realize you're having them while you work. But it's like you speak about like yeah, we should like kind of fold the space and in this corner bring the, like, you know what I mean, like it's like almost music sometimes touches almost the same realms as mathematics. It's something like very there, very physical, like a like a sonic frequency, and at the same time completely abstract, like and beyond any specific language, let's say, like. So it's that's what I would like to feel, those kind of exchanges and that kind of trust, like of being like, what I like is not so much your music. Of course, I like also your music, but the main point is like, I like what the music is born from, let's say,
Right.
I like the source. And then, you know, then you become a source. You don't become an output anymore. And that's when magic happens, you know, like, yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
The way you described it. And so do people approach you more for releases, or you approach them? Oh, actually, from what you said, it seems
As a label owner, you mean?
No, as an artist. So you release on Samurai,
artist,
yeah, as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
You release on a bunch of label, Mote Evolver, Samurai. Did it happen because you knew the people, you clicked, like with, you know, with Seth, Rrose, or
like for example, Luke Slater has been someone that always really made me feel like at full on trust, you know, like full on trust, like from day one, you know, even when in both ways, like when things were happening, when things were not happening, it was still like the feeling of like ease, you know. And it was like a two-way thing, that when I was reading for him and when he was reading for me on Stroboscopic in the same way, you know. With Samurai, yeah, first of all, I fucking love the label. Always has been like, it's just like the curational aspect is just like beyond, particularly the horror series, you know. But yeah, it's been always like that. And to be honest, when I did that EP on Samurai, it was like completely, yeah, there was not one single beat in the whole thing. It was like completely like drony, super spacey thing. There was also kind of not exactly obvious for the catalog, you know what I mean? Like, and at the same time, once again, playing with archetypes and trust on the other side, and it came out as a very beautiful thing. And it sold out like super quick as well. Like, so it was like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, you know, like.
And the magic happens.
Yeah, and the magic somehow happens. It could be that it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't, but and it's okay. Like it's not always on you and on the label. Sometimes they're like, it's music business, man. Like there's like variables that you cannot even. It's not even because of music. It's like of any artistic field. There are variables that are absolutely unpredictable. Like, you know, like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love if some producers are hearing this right now to take this away with them from this conversation, because it's please do more music that you love, and
yeah,
hopefully it's gonna go well. If it doesn't, it's still worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
And let's talk about Stroboscopic. So your baby, your artistic baby, started in 2009, pretty much when you moved to Berlin. It seems like it's been labeled by outside people as a techno label, but I know you might find that limiting. Have you ever found yourself be like, I don't want to be a techno label?
Have you ever found yourself what? Sorry?
Thinking I don't want to be thought of as a techno label owner because of the way that people describe it.
Yeah. Let's say, are you there?
I am there. Yeah.
Yeah. I heard some feedback. So like the thing is, like, once again, when we speak about like a techno label, I'm not sure how to relate to it either. You know what I mean? Like, for me, like Stroboscopic at the beginning was like just like the get together of a few people that there was like a lot of mutual respect for. And it was like me, Shin, this artist from Singapore that was releasing in the very first phase of Stroboscopic. And we knew each other from another label we both released on, which was Meresif, which was like an old label from Stuttgart, from the south of Germany, like where there was like a little bit of a school for us, you know. And it was like with the dub guys that were like starting to do like post-production and mastering and stuff, and that's how it all started. It was really like some friends doing this together, you know, and it was beautiful. And then you know, it wasn't really about one genre of music, to be honest. It was just about like getting together, having something to say, and having a platform based in a place that was a very free place like Berlin in 2009, like but it was like I don't know, this feeling of like everything can happen, there is no pressure, life is super cheap, everything is super cheap, like, so you can go on as an artist with good ideas without thinking too much about like the money variable, you know what I mean, like and that's what gives like unique results. And it's a story that has been like the same in Berlin in that period, in London before, in New York before London. Like there has been like cycles of the story over the modern music history in the Western countries, So it was very beautiful, but like then the label slowly developed, of course, into something else. We became a much bigger roster, and it kind of lost this like little collective shape, and transformed it into something that was like more of a collective, like I don't know, when you think about like twin labels have been in the history, like I don't know, Soundwave District, like the same period of time where those things were going on, and it started becoming a more of a like structured proper label with like departments and shit, you know what I mean, like, and then somehow in the last few years I did my best to try and bring it back to that more intimate shape, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so, but regarding the kind of music, once again, I always approach the thing about like with having respect for the approach that the artist has, and not so much like, hey, I want a banger. Like, and because you did a banger like a month ago, can you do something similar? Like that has never been my thing. For me, it's like really like, hey, I love what you do and what you are when I see you on stage. I know what you are, what you emanate energetically, artistically. So I'm sure that if we engage and we agree on making a release, whatever you do will be fine. Once again, that I dig it fully or that it's like not exactly what I wanted and stuff like this, it doesn't matter, like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
It's very interesting because you seem to have gone from the phase of being like a very tight group of people, small, where it felt like platform for a few of you, and then it became big, and then you stretched it back to become a bit smaller. So perhaps it gave more space for people to be there, to be free, to be trusted. Was there
Yeah, and somehow, for example, sorry if I interrupt,
go
but
for it, of
somehow
course.
this is one of the positive sides of this complete chaos that is happening in the music business, is really giving me time to gain a perspective, because the last few years has been like everything is so quick, like you kind of have to step up the game of the gigs and stuff, and like everything is constantly there, you know what I mean, and the whole world needs to be participant of your experiences through social media. So it's kind of somehow there is an aspect of pressure about it, particularly if you come from generation like mine, that I'm not in my 20s, but I'm on my 30s, where like I remember what it was when the pressure was not there, you know what I mean, and that changes a lot of things, a lot of dynamics, let's say. So right now it's actually very good to feel to have that time to gain perspective, and it's like I'm having some ideas about record label, that are very lucid, that are very like obviously right, this is gonna be amazing, when it's gonna, like, I can't tell you now because it's still ongoing projects that are not finished, but it's like what I'm trying to communicate is like a clarity, that I wasn't feeling that clear since the very early days, you know what I mean, that is like this is so clear, this is purely inspirational, and this artist is perfect, and how do we present this artist to the world in this and this and this way, you know what I mean. So when things click together like this, that's when you get a listen to it, like, yeah.
Indeed, and the world situation has created a lot of space for this.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
It's like a big reset.
It's a big reset with all the negative and positive aspects of it. It's still like a big reset. Like,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Something I found super interesting when I was digging into your work and also artistic expression and everything. You posted a couple of months ago a picture of you with your new haircut, shaved, and the caption read something like "letting go of what no longer serves you." What was behind that? If you want to talk about it.
Well, there's quite a lot of things there. Like some of them are very personal, and because there's some, let's say, some things that happened to my life in the last like 1 or 2 years that feels very unfair, very untrue, very really not cool somehow, and that is something that has been really stressing me out a lot. And so I decided to simply approach the whole issue differently, and letting go of this feeling of frustration about it, and instead like opening up to it. So yes, and as well as that, cutting the hair when I never ever did that, it's a very impressive how to say, ritual experiences of cleansing, like it's like there is so much about like musically. Like after I did that, I started like 2 new projects with like 2 different names in 2 different music styles and stuff like this. So that you will probably hear about in a few months, but that was really, really a very important move. And I made that post with my shaved head like kind of a few days after I did it. So it was really feeling like, I was like, whoa, this is more important than I thought, you know what I mean? Like, and yeah. And I'm getting actually a lot of questions there.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Are you getting them on Instagram? Alessandro is actually checking the question and sharing them with me on a page. Are you getting them onto your personal page, or shall we just go
to the Lucy Facebook page? Yeah.
Okay, I think we are checking them. Alice, I see him typing them on a Google Doc. Yes. So let's start with the audience question, and thank you again for sharing with us the story about your new version of Luca.
The new version of Luca.
So let's start okay. So I think this is topical. Someone is writing, what would be your advice to finding your own voice, your own sound?
Well, my advice, first of all, is not to think about your own sound, because that's the biggest bullshit they try to convince you about. Because there is no one sound. All the art has always been a collage and a remixing of previous things. So I find, for example, that like some of the most interesting output of myself came from imitation first, like there is something that I fucking love, like a track that is really like blowing my mind, and I sit down in the studio and try to understand what they did to get there, you know what I mean? And that is a process that where you shouldn't like kind of try to copy, but try to understand what made it possible in the process, because that's learning, that is not copying. Okay. And so when you do that, then the rest kind of comes somehow, you know what I mean? So this almost like semi-imitational learning process is the base of a great album for me. Like every time I ended up producing a whole album is the same moments where I'm like experimenting with a new setup, for example, or like getting really into one new music style, you know what I mean? And it's like and getting like super into it, like and that's something very refreshing that normally it's like not even techno, but like I try to translate in techno things I get from somewhere else, and I remember really phases in my life where it's like for my first album there was like mostly like dub, like really Jamaican dub, like Lee Perry, Keen Tubby, that kind of shit. You know what I mean? That then I was like, how do they technically do it? How do they fucking touch the mixer to do that? You know, why? How can you use a reverb and a delay as an instrument and not as an effect? You know what I mean? Like, and all of those things. Like, and then like in the end, I ended up making my whole first album, like starting from the curiosity, like, and I think still my first album was kind of its own thing, you know. So somehow it was my sound for how my sound was 11 years ago. So that's what I mean. Do not get obsessed by this very by ideals of things where like they try to convince you like the artist must be like original and stuff. Like original is a word that has like a fucking trillion meaning, like and can mean anything and nothing. So as all these words that are so charged, like don't trust them too much. Really do your thing, do what you like. Like I don't know, at the moment what I like is like the underground trap music, to be honest.
I love
like,
that too.
from like the old Atlanta school of trap stuff, like amazing shit. It sounds incredible, you know. Like when you speak about bass music, that's the top for me right now. Like the top, like and I'm into like so much into it that I'm like experimenting with it, trying to understand how they do this and that and blah blah blah. Like listening to my favorite producers like speaking and stuff like this. Even if it's another genre, I'm sure somehow it will be into me when I sit down for my next album, and it will be something that will be my own thing. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe it will be Lucy, maybe it will be another of these crazy fucking projects I put together in this COVID moment. But
it makes a lot of sense. And there is a question the audience is asking, when is your next EP, if you can tell us?
Well, I kind of voluntarily took a break from releasing original music because I'm taking this time to really experiment with a few things in the studio, and it's very interesting. And let's say this is not a moment where I can allow myself to be influenced from the outside to like releasing even like the big feedback and the press and the interviews and new press pictures, man, and stuff like that, like, and all of that stuff. Like I am in a moment where I'm like kind of taking advantage of this COVID tragedy pretty much somehow, at least for the little part that can be positive, like, and find somehow something that belongs to my roots, but in a very new way, let's say. So this is why I am patiently waiting now that patience is possible finally, you know what I mean? Like, so this is what I'm trying. Oh my god, so many questions on Facebook. I think I will have to do a new live just to answer them. I feel like
I mean, like if it was for me, we can stay a little bit longer. If you agree, we can try to answer it. I'm doing my best to listen to you, of course, and be present, and also batch the question. Alessandro's typing them, so let's try to cover a few more.
Yeah, go for it.
So there is about a lot of questions around your workflow, your equipment. Let me start from before the equipment. Did you ever study musical theory?
I saw that, like a few people asked that. So I don't have an academic training in terms of like harmony laws and things like this, but I do have some training in percussions. Okay. So the only thing I studied for a little bit has been like percussions. Like I studied, particularly considered the first thing I ever musically touched. I was speaking about the African community in Palermo when I was really like an early teenager and living a lot in the streets, you know, was like djembes and drums of like skin drums of all sorts. So that's when I got into the sense of rhythm, the sense of collective playing, like the sense of like playing on a rhythm, the sense of obsessive loops that go over and over again, but they're always different somehow from the previous bars, you know. But I never trained in terms of like piano or like notes or chords and stuff like that. I have no idea. I have very little knowledge. I go with my ear just. I also studied, in terms of percussion, I studied also some tabla and Hindustani music practice and theory, which was extremely interesting and very close somehow to a lot of things techno, let's say. Yes, and that was it in terms of music theory, and academy. Yeah.
Got it. And how is your workflow at the moment? I know you probably changed it a few times in your life.
Yeah, at the moment, I'm actually, as I'm also, yeah, mm, for this, I mean, new things I'm putting together, also playing with some live musicians and live voices and stuff like this. It's a bit different, but normally, like everything, all the machines pass through my analog slash digital mixer. It's Midas Venice Firewire mixer, which is a mixer I really like. It's not like the top of the pop, but it's a super, like, quite good sound and very versatile, and I like to be really hands-on on an actual mixer. And then I use a lot of like, not a lot, but some parallel processing, like saturators and things like this, also plugged into the mixer. And then I use Ableton Live as pretty much as an arranger, but not much more than that. I
Yeah.
barely use any native effects and stuff like or VSTs and stuff. It's like most of it is like machines recorded through the mixer into Ableton. That's how I work.
So
Yeah.
you would record a take, let's say, from a machine, and then
Yeah.
process it and arrange it on in Ableton.
Exactly. Yeah. Process it, not even much. I process it mostly with other analog machines, but like arrange it, yes. And also sometimes, like, what I really like to do, which is something, that is borrowed by the dub Jamaican culture, is like to have the main mixer and then sub mixers. Like I have a bunch of other older mixers that are like around the room, like down somewhere, like hidden below, where it's like I create like almost like mini systems, you know what I mean? For example, like a mini drumming system in one thing that becomes its own sound and stuff like this, with their own delays and stuff like this, and effects, and then merging together with something else where it's like super hi-fi and stuff like this. I like mixing different universes together at the moment, so that's in the direction I'm working on.
Yeah, and I'm getting excited. I'm looking forward to, as I'm sure a lot of people who are listening
I don't
now.
even know it will be like something where people would know it's Lucy. Like, let's see. I'm still deciding. Like, so
We're gonna be left with this.
yes, with this
doubts.
question mark.
Question mark. Maybe, I mean, at some point we're gonna have to do a part 2 interview with
Yes.
you with a different alias.
Like, so what about that?
What about that? And there is a question that seems to be one of the most asked questions from Juliana, from Flam, and from someone else, which is, do you still run your gong meditations? And how do you... Yeah,
like, actually, I did until summer, until the weather was nice in Berlin. I was coming like once a month or something like this, doing these open air sessions that were like super beautiful. Like we were going to Hassenheide or to Temple of Verfeld. Hassenheide until it became fucking like rave woods, like rave. Then it was like not possible anymore to make any form of meditation. And then Temple of Verfeld, we did quite a few, and it was super beautiful actually. And so of course I changed the format because I couldn't do them at Yellow Yoga anymore in the yoga school I was doing them before, like because of social distancing, and there was like too many people and it was like capacity very limited. So now it's gonna be winter soon. That's like more restrictions every day, so I will keep it up. I'm not sure exactly how yet, but we will find a way for sure, as we always did.
Yeah, of course. And what initially brought you to yoga? Was it a need of finding something to balance your nightlife?
It was strange. I don't know. It was like it was something I had. Like I was with at that time a partner of mine for a long time that is actually a yoga teacher and was practicing a lot every day. Of course, training and studying and stuff like this. Like very serious one. and somehow, after years of having it in front of my eyes, I just started once again process of imitation, like a child. You start but started trying, and then something really clicked, and I never stopped since. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I gotta say, over the years, I became less and less interested into the physical asana, like exercise aspect, and more a lot into like deep breathing and deep meditation states and stuff like so. That's where my interest has been shifting in the last few years, let's say. Yeah.
Yeah.
As I mean, the people that come to the Berlin sound bathing sessions know very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make sure that we'll make sure that we're gonna include the links if you decide to, if you're gonna have compatibly with the coronavirus guidelines. If you're gonna have
Yes.
more, we're gonna share
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
And,
for sure.
and before the COVID happened, did you find that there was it was hard to keep the balance with doing meditation during the week, perhaps, and touring a weekend?
No, actually, that was perfect. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
that has been my balance for a while, let's say. Until the moment where I realized that meditation can be also something else. That means like that maybe the real deal is when you stop thinking about it as meeting a need, because that can become also an addiction. I at some point I realized like this feeling after a nice session of yoga, this feeling after a nice meditation, it's addictive. It's like I need it to the west. I get nervous because I didn't do it. So blah blah blah. Like that, I realize it's really a wrong way to approach meditation, And so there was this kind of shift at some point. That probably, I don't know, 2-3 years ago this happened, when I was like, you know what about if this is really its own thing, and I stop being judgmental about it, like that maybe it's not about simply feeling good, but it's about working on yourself. You know what I mean? And that changed a lot of things. I'd say that's also when the sound bathing sessions took a very different depth, let's say, at least in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it became like another of your activities and
Yes,
pleasure in itself.
exactly. Yeah.
It's very interesting, and also breath work is something that I've personally experienced. I think it's a beautiful practice. It's done in a lot of ways. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it's yeah, let's say for a while it was also a way of surviving the heavy touring life, let's say.
yeah,
And at some point when this shift happened that I was telling you about, it was just like, okay, now I can really go with the flow, and I stop kind of resisting things. So that's when a very beautiful flow of things started happening. Yeah.
Thank you. Few more questions, and then we go toward the wrap up.
Yes.
Okay, I think this is quite topical. So first of all, there is someone who just said best set from Lucy I ever heard. I think it was the ADE.
Which one? Which AD?
I think Lotus Eaters.
Yes.
So it must have been last one.
Yes, that was amazing. And it's like off-location venue that opened only for ADE. It was unbelievable. Like really, like it was the most amazing party. Really, like yeah. I still remember. Also, yeah, like all the sets and stuff. Like I don't know, it was really special. And also somehow, like we had some pretty intense issues technically, like meaning like we would hear really badly in the booth when we were playing the live, and at the same time the energy we exchanged with the crowd was just like otherworldly. Like really, I still, like when I look at the videos, I get like, what the fuck, like I wish I was in the crowd kind of feeling.
Yeah. It's basically like you're getting a lot of love for this set. Ruben said this has been one of the best sets I've ever heard. Very meditative with long
So
drawing.
Yeah, the intro was like endless. I was like, go for it, like, yeah. But also our Rrose was loving that. I remember, like, I was seeing their face when we were doing the intro, and it was like I was like, I'm not gonna drop any drum for a while, like. And then when it did drop, like the
Boom.
place, like, just went a bit nuts. Yeah.
Went nuts, and then I think this is Ale's writing. He said, "Ho volato."
Yeah.
The-
That's the right feeling. I was flying too. Yes. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And okay, so there is
Or
one
someone
question.
saying that night changed my life. Oh my God, that was I didn't know it was so.
Wow.
So you're all still there. That's amazing. Yes.
Luca, if you agree, I think we should put the link to that set in the show notes.
Yeah, I think we should. I don't know what it is now, but yeah, maybe
I'll
you can
I'll
deal with
find
that.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll find it.
Mhm.
I would certainly put it. So one question, together with some big love from India, is what was one of the biggest challenges you faced with the label?
Mm-hmm. Ah, by the way, I have to apologize with India because that was one of the very first tours that got cancelled because of COVID. It was would have been my first time in India, so I was like so gutted. But I promise at some point it will come back. Yeah.
You
So
must.
what were you asking? Sorry.
No, so the question is, what were some of the biggest obstacles you found with the label by running Stroboscopic?
Egos, artist egos. There you go. So that has been one of the toughest ones. Some relationship with artists, like, I mean, I also have kind of an intense ego. I'm aware of it. Like, but sometimes it's pretty intense to deal with. Like, particularly when it's about like compilations and stuff. It was like yeah, who comes first and stuff, and that track was mastered with more care than the other, and why, like, did you do this in the graphic because this, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, so it's always like, or like in particular when you do showcase, when you also organize events, it's pretty intense, because you start speaking about nasty things that I wish I could never speak about, like valuing artists by fees and money. So that is like the most fucking boring part, like and yeah, so those are a bit the parts that are more like requiring, or yeah, this basically, because the rest is really a joy to run a label. Like, it has been an amazing 10 years, like, even if
Yeah.
now we're in this pause moment where we're like taking a breath and deciding what's next, if there is next, let's say, or if things will really radically change shape. It's yeah, for the rest, it's really a joy. Like, I think in one way or another, to be honest, I will always run a label. It's too cool. Like, yeah.
There's so much good things that come with that, and the same person from India that I unfortunately don't have their name, but they say that your Monad series is by far one of the most amazing and timeless, intelligent music I have ever heard. So big
That's
love.
very sweet. Love, a lot of love back, really. That is so beautiful to hear. Yeah. Mm.
Very, very, very happy to hear.
Mm.
Couple of last questions. So there's another one which seems to be quoted, the most quoted is, any chances for a new Zeitgeber? Zeitgeber.
Yeah, for sure. We actually spoke not long ago with Joachim, with Speedy J,
Speedy
about
J.
sitting to. The thing is, like, also with Joachim, like with Speedy J, like, we always said this thing of like, in these intense collaborations, like, I just like this kind of formation. I had two in my life. One was Zeitgeber with Speedy J, and the other the Lotus Eater with a Rrose. Like, there's something very special about deciding that you just sit together and work, like, and you never work on a distance remotely. So I'm sure it will happen, and I even have quite a few ideas about it. But we really just recently took the topic again with Joachim, and we were like, maybe, that's the time to do something. I think I would love to go like very abstract with the next one, like very abstract, like yeah.
Mm-hmm. Are you thinking about a release in this case, or a gig, a performance?
Well, I guess something both. Like, first of all a release, and then seeing from there what is giggable out of it, let's say.
Yeah, sounds very cool, and I cross my fingers for that to happen very soon. Gigs, especially.
Yes.
What is one of Luca's secret weapons beyond music?
Beyond music, cooking. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love to cook. It's such a beautiful thing. Like, yeah. But though, aside music, I don't know. I'm someone that, like, well, for example, in a balance of touring, how my life has been until COVID, let's say, I was always like, as soon as I had some free time, I was like really submerging myself deep into nature, like going to nature reserve every time I could and stuff like this. Like, so, and those are the things I like to do. Right now, what I like to do is submerge myself in the studio and making something that I hope you will love in a few months. Yes.
Well, we keep on being teased, and we and the two last questions, which are a bit of a tradition for these interviews. So one is, who is a guest that you would love us to interview if you were in our place, and why?
Are we still speaking techno or anything?
Anyone who does music. Anyone who does music.
Probably at the moment, So let's say two things. Let's say one more into something that is more familiar to our world, and one that is completely out. One that is completely out would be like Young M.A., like a hip hop artist from US that is very special, and one of the few very queer personality that came out super strongly. She's a declared lesbian, which is a very, very rare thing in American Black culture music. So I have a massive amount of admiration for her, and that would be an amazing interview for sure. Other than that, probably, yeah, I mean, to be honest, like after hearing the last Outtaker show, like the other day when they streamed the new album, that would be also a pretty interesting one. A bit hard to catch, but yeah, that would be my tip. Yes.
Thank you. Let us try.
Yes, and of course, a Rrose. Like that's always like an immense source of inspiration every time they open the mouth. So yeah.
Yeah, I love the ideas they suggested.
Cool.
Thank you. And then the last question is, we're asking everyone to tell us what question you want us to ask our next guest without knowing who they're gonna be.
Who they're gonna be? Okay. Let's see. I would say, I don't know. Maybe, does making music make you happy?
All right.
Yes, something like this. And if that is ever the point of it, Yeah.
Amazing. This is a deep question. Let's see. Lucky who is gonna get this. As you can imagine, there is a question from the previous guest, which is.
Oh, God. Fuck. Okay. Shite. Okay, I didn't see that coming. Okay.
You were relaxing. You were like, okay, we're done.
I was like, I'm gonna go now. Nope.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Not yet.
Yes.
So, and I'm gonna twist it a little bit to make it. You can decide how to answer. What color palette you see when you are on acid or when you feel very creative? You don't need to answer. You answer
like either, but I gotta say, one of the most intense experiences I had in the last few years has been like probably it was like something like I don't know. I could literally see music in geometrical shapes like perfectly, and it was like it wasn't like a mandala like you can imagine. It was really like this super softy, almost gummy like cubes,
Mm-hmm.
like hanging in the air, moving and stretching in certain ways. And it was like red, yellow, this very like warm, alive colors, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Was there a color palette specifically, or was all the colors together?
it was like, yeah, probably just like, let's say, I would say green, red, yellow, this kind of thing. Yeah.
Wow.
It was very, very beautiful. Like I still remember because there was a little like a string instrument playing in the room. It's like some form of guitar, but not a guitar, not a Western guitar. And I just remember it to like having this feeling that I sometimes have in the studio or in a gig, but just to a degree that was unbelievable. Like literally seeing the physicality of music, like and on that colors were really important. Like, and they were warm and heartwarming. You know, like yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Sounds
Yes.
beautiful. And on that inspiring note, Luca, thanks so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure
You're
to
very
have you.
welcome. Yeah, you're very welcome. Yes.
Very cool. Any announcement, anything that people, if they want to know or hear about you in the next coming months,
Yeah.
where should they go?
Well, come on. The interview was so nice that I decided I will do this masterclass for you. So let's look forward for it.
Done. Okay.
We got a deal.
We got a deal. Amazing. Yes.
So
we would love to have you.
masterclass incoming for.
Another spoiler alert.
Yes, spoiler alert. Yes.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, for sure. That sounds great, and looking forward to that and to maybe the new aliases and everything.
Yes.
Luca, thank you again for being with us. Enjoy
You're very
your night.
welcome. Hey, thank you everyone for tuning in. Love you all and miss you all. Ciao, ciao.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, this is Joseph, and this is the outro. If you really like the content, I wanted to ask you, please consider liking us on Instagram or leaving a review on the podcast. Whether you're using that on Apple is very useful for us, and your comment makes all of our work worth it. Also, if you have any guests that you really would like us to chat with, let us know. We take any suggestion or any feedback, and we use it to improve and direct what we're gonna do next. If you're a producer and you're interested in masterclasses with artists such as Scalameria, VSK, Romek, Lag, and many more, you can now check our website homosound.co.uk. We have plenty of classes and more are coming as well. So brace yourself, you're gonna get a lot of content. And one last thing, shout out for Vlad for editing this podcast and Declan for creating the content that you all see on social media. Plus, of course, big thanks to Juliana, Flaminia, Alessandro and Rick from TapeFeed for all the rest of the work at HoS Sound. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time at HoS Sound.